Yesterday we discussed about data-driven testing. So with the help of like data provider, and we saw like what are the different data types that we use as part of like data-driven. I mean like data provider as well as like data-driven also. Okay. So today we'll be discussing about like listeners. Why do we use listeners and what are the different types of listeners that we have that we are going to discuss today. Mostly like today's topic would be last for the test engine. Okay, so I'll just show you like how do we exactly use this listeners or annotations that will be like as part of like our curriculum. Okay, so in general, in real time, as we looked into this, so this is like one way of using this data-driven testing. So only I just showed you like how do we exactly use it in terms of like we create a different data providers for reading the data from Excel files. So based on our requirements, okay, to execute multiple test cases and how do we organize them, that we are going to see if we have some time today after discussing the listeners. Okay, so let me talk about like listeners first. So what are listeners actually? So listeners are like, if you do some set of action, so we have like, so let me just go to the documentation. So that will give you clear idea about like what is listener. Okay, basic introduction about the listeners. So okay, so here you can see that listeners define the listeners in the test class, an array of classes that extend. So this is nothing but an array of classes that extended from the IDS listener. So generally, listeners, if you are doing some actions, okay. So let me just go to this listener here. So here is it. So there are several interfaces that we have. Okay, listeners are like several these are kind of like interfaces. Okay, so each listener has its own implementation. Okay, it's kind of like we have different set of functionalities. So wherein we are going to use it for using this particular listeners. So there are like several interfaces that allows you to modify TestNG behavior. Okay, so the interfaces are broadly called as TestNG listeners. Here are few listeners. So you have clear documentation is also given here. So let's see that what listeners generally that we are going to use. Okay, we are going to use like I transformation, I annotation transformation, and another one is like ITest listener. Okay, so let me go to this ITest listeners and we try to understand what is that. Okay, so this listener, what it does is like, so if you want to configure something on test failure, if you are executing some test case on failure, what you want to do? You want to put a message saying that this particular test is failed, or on skip you want to say that this particular test is skipped. On success you want to just show it to the user, like, or else you want to record a log saying that this particular test is passed. Okay, so and you want to do some logs, or if you want to just configure something as part of like user like it should be kind of like user defined message, and that will let user know about the behavior of the test. Okay, so and how do we implement this is like, this is kind of like interfaces. Okay, so let's just understand about like interfaces. How do we exactly use these interfaces, and what are the different types of ways that we are going to use these listeners. Okay, let me just show you. So this is all about the documentation. You can see when you just click on this doc, so it will just show you. Okay, otherwise you can just go to the Java doc, and this Java doc will show you how exactly this listeners will be used. Okay, all super interfaces, like this is like super interface, and what are the known implementation classes of this is like, you can see these are like known implementation classes. Okay, and how do we use it is like listener ITest listener extends ITest listeners. Okay, ITest change listener. So this is the base listener. This is kind of like a interface, and it's going to extend this particular. This is also kind of a interface. Okay, so it's going to implement that interface. So what are the different methods that we have? We see on finish, on start, on test failure. So we'll configure, we'll try to see what happens with the help of this particular methods. How do we use it? That we are going to see. Okay. So before getting into this, so we talked about like few things like interfaces. How do we implement the interface? I'm just going to create a, it's called testng. So if we take this test interface, so how do we implement, like how do we use these interfaces? For example, if you want to have these methods, for example, if you want to have this like, public void test run. Why do we need interfaces? Just we know about that particular action, but we are not sure about the implementation. In that case, we are going to use the interfaces. For example, you see test run, test success. I want to show some message in case of success. Public void test fail. Public void test skip. Okay, so just this is nothing but use the defined interface. I'm just creating the interface here. Okay, for the implementation, what I'm going to do is like I'm going to take a class called test implementation. Okay, so here what I need to do is like I need to use the implements keyword. Then I'm going to use the test interface. So here when I implement this interface, it will ask me to add the implementation, okay, of these methods. So what do you want to do here? So for example, if you want to project something saying that test run started. Okay, so test run started. Test run success. Test run fail. Test run skip. Okay, so guys, just give me a second, guys. I'm just coming back. So I'll take 2 minutes of time. I'll just come back. So as we see that I've just created this interface and I'm trying to implement this interface as part of like test implementation class. Now when I run it, but what is that we have to do is like, see now, if you want to run this, so we should have some so method for this. Okay, so we are not using any test annotation for now. So in general, how do we use this is like, we'll be using it in Java class. Okay, so this Java class is like I am just trying to create some interface within the like methods, and these methods are like getting used in one of the classes, and that class will decide the behavior. Okay, so I'm sorry, I just control that. So here, what I'm doing is like I'm just creating. I'm just calling it as like test IMP new. Now I can call this methods, right? So fail, pass, and whatever have you. So observe carefully now. What I'm trying to do is like I have created an interface, so which will have the default behavior. Like it does not have any behavior. Like that. Let us consider if I want to have one more method, default void test name. So I'm putting something here. This is to get the test. I should have this. Okay, so some test name that it will return me this test name. Okay, so this is nothing but default behavior of it. So in this case, if you want to override, you can override. Like you can just add this method here, and you can see this. So it says like it is not getting override. Default methods are allowed only interfaces. You get. So now it is like it is overriding the method which is there. Okay. So when I just try to call this test name, I'm just using this int dot test name. Okay, calling it somewhere else. Like if you want to get it like name of the test, it will just give you the name of the test here. So I'm just passing it as like a. It will work in case of like annotations. Just like if you want to get some name of the test and if you want to display here after some kind of execution is done. So I can call it here and I can get the name of the test here. Okay. So just to show you example, how do we exactly use this? Okay. So I need to have this. Then some annotations, test result. So I want to get the result of it. So I'll be passing it as like a I test result dot skip. I'll call it here. Okay. I think I need to pass something. Okay, something that we want to get it. Okay, let me just remove this one and so let me remove this one also. So if I execute this, so what it does is like it's going to just show me like the behavior. Like I'm implementing this, right? So I'm going to get this behavior. So when I just see this, what is happening here? Test success, failure, started and skipped, and this is -1 something. Okay. What it is doing now? So it is kind of like a custom interface that I've created. Okay. So here I have created the custom interface. I'm putting some methods here. And these all methods are like static methods. Okay. So you can see the behavior of public static void final. Okay. So this is nothing but not final, but static. So that thing is like what we are trying to do is like we are just creating some methods and we want to give the behavior of it. And this behavior can be implemented in one of the classes. Okay. So, but in case of TestNG internally what they have done is like they have designed some interface. Okay. So there are a lot of interfaces that we have, right? So here you can see, for example, it says like there are several interfaces that allows you to modify the TestNG behavior. Okay, internally they have some set of behaviors here. So if you want to override that behavior, okay, so override the behavior. For example, iTest listener, what it does is like it's going to help you with some of these annotations. Like we have a kind of annotations over there, like before method, before test, like all this like on test failure. So these are the different set of methods along with the annotations that we have. So what they do is like they have some certain behavior. So if you want to change that certain behavior and you want to call them during the execution, and you want to know that what is happening during the execution. In that case, we can go and use this TestNG listener. So this TestNG listeners will have these methods. Okay. So we have to implement these methods whenever you are implementing this particular TestNG listener interface. Okay. So you can say iTestNG listener interface. So if you want to implement this, then what you have to do is like you have to provide the behavior to this particular method. So you can see there are like something iTest context, iText context, and you can see iResult. So these are nothing but these are the interfaces again. Okay. So these are internally called as like interfaces within this internally called as like a parameters within these interfaces. Okay, so this is interfaces called as parameter to this interface. Okay, and what they do is like you can see on start default void. So what is the access modifier for this is like default void on test start invoked each time before a test will be invoked. Okay, each time a test, if some test is starting, so this will be invoked. Okay, so invoke each time before a test will be invoked. On test success is like, see, invoked each time a test succeeded. On failure, invoked each time a test failure. On skipped is like each time a test is skipped. So likewise, it has given like behavior here. So we don't use all of them. We'll use only few things like, whichever is required for us. So this is like, methods on start of the method, on finish, like, what happens on start of the method, on finished of the method. Okay. So if you want to see what is happening over there, so then we have to like, if you want to know what is happening during the execution, then you can go and use this listeners. Okay. So let's go and explore this. So, but in general, the interfaces, how do we use the interfaces? Now you see, I've created the interface. When I just implement this interface, then I'm just, providing this unimplemented body to the unimplemented methods. Okay. So this is like just example of Java, but in case of TestNG, how do we use it? I will go and try to explore that. Okay. So here I'm going to create TestNG listener. I'm just naming it as like TestNG listener class. Okay. Now I want to implement. So which is that interface that we want to implement now is like we want to implement the interface which will provide the behavior of each and every test. Okay. So in that case, I'm going to use iTestNG listener. Okay. iTestNG listener. But you can see there are a lot of listeners that we have. Okay. And we see that we don't get any implementation, like it's not showing up. But when you go to this listener, iTest listener, so what is happening? So here, this marker interface for all the objects, but we have the methods for this, right? So we looked into that method also. How do we implement this now? So right click on this. So if it's like, if it's not throwing an error, then what we have to do is like, we have to right click on this, go to the sources, override, add implemented methods. Okay. So let me just show you iTest listener. We have created the wrong one. Let me just take this one. For iTestNG listener, okay, we don't have anything. Which one we have to implement? iTest listener. Okay, sorry, that is this is like super interface for this. I'm just going to take this iTest listener. Not required. Now right click on this, go to the sources, and you can see all the methods are available. Okay, so we are using JDK 17, right? So JDK 17 or 18. So in that case, it doesn't show up like, what are the methods which are there in the ITS listener. Okay. So if you want to implement them, what you need to do is like, you need to go to the source and you can see that there is a method called, there is the option called override implement methods. Okay. So this, when you click on this, it will show you like internally methods which are available as part of like ITS listener. So which is the method? This is like allowing us to, it's kind of like it is like showing, it's not showing all the methods here, but if you want to see the methods, then you can just use this way. Okay. So what is that approach if something is not showing up? Okay. In case of like interfaces or something. So in that case, how do we go and implement them is like right click on the right click on this editor and you can go to the source and you can see that override implement methods. Okay. So this is for the advanced versions of Java. So which is like hiding this implementation. If you want to implement them, then you have to use this option. So what do you want to see first is like, first we'll see that on test failure, on skipped and on start. Okay. So on success, just we'll add these things. I can see it is showing up. These are the default behavior of it. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So on test, I want to show some message. Okay. So what is that message is like? Test started or something. Okay. Test started. Test success. Okay. These are the methods I'm trying to customize them. Okay. So if you don't customize, then what happens is like it will have its own behavior. Test failure. Okay, so now we have this listener created. I'm going to create a simple class here. This listener. Okay, so here I've created TestNG listener class and I'm trying to name it as like, okay, test class. Let me take it as like a test class with this package. So here I'm going to create few tests. Public void test one. This is test one. I'm going to intentionally fail few test cases and few I want to skip it. Okay, so this is test one. And here I want to throw an exception. It's kind of like failure. Okay, so throw new exception. It should be throw new exception. Exception inside that I'm going to say that test failed. And implement this test. So here I'm going to throw the exception. Another one is like throw new skip exception. Okay, so here also we have one exception. So like this is specific to the TestNG. If you want to skip something, you can skip it. Okay, so this is like part of runtime exception. I can see skip exception. If you want to skip it, you can skip it. Okay, from where it is coming from the TestNG. Okay, so one is like I want this is like passed, this is like failed, and this is like skipped, and this one is like yeah. So anyways, like we have this three things that we have here. So let's see what are those things. On test start, success, failure, and skipped. Okay. So let me go and run it now. So here, this is test one, test one, test one, test one. It is showing test one. Okay, let me just change this one. Test two, test three, test four. Right click on as test change. Go here and see what is happening. Okay, so let's go and see. Here you can see this is passed, this is failed, and this is like skipped, and this is like a pass. Okay, but you don't get anything do you see anything which is like showing up listeners here? So it's not showing. How do we implement this listener? So if you want to implement this listener at the class level, then we have to use the annotation called listener. Okay, listener annotation. Within that, we have to give the class name. Okay, where the listener is deciding. So this is the listener class, right? So it should listen the activities that we are performing, or actions that we are performing in the class. So this is what we have to give. Now go and try to run it. Now you can see the behavior of it. See, look at the console. Test started. This is test one. Test success. Test started. Test two. For each and every test, what it is doing is like it is trying to execute one thing. Okay, do you see this now? Test started, test one, test success. Okay, so it is passing. And it is like next one is like test started, test two, test failure. Okay, next is like test started, test three, skipped, and test four, test started, test four, test success. Okay, so what it is doing now? It is like for every test, it is showing up this behavior. Okay, on test started, what it is going to do is like it will print this test started. On test success, it will show this. Failure, it will show. Skipped, it will show. Okay, if anything is skipped, it's going to show. So if you want, if you want to know this, so what is the reason behind this particular, actions that are performed on this particular test? Okay. So what happened in this case is like now you see, I have just created a test and listener. I want to observe the behavior. What is happening before and after each test? Okay, before and after each test. Likewise, you can go and implement for each test to start. It's going to give this on test finish also, like on test, on finish and on start. What it does is like it's going to show those things also. Now I'm going to the source again. I'm going to implement two of the methods. On finish, I want to know. On start, I want to know. On finish, where is that? On finish we have here. Okay. Context. Get name of the text. Okay. So on finish, I want to know the name, and on finish, on start, I want to get the name. Okay. Now you go and execute this. See, test started. This is test one, default test. It is like default test. It is taking the default test. And after ending, you can see it is saying the default test. Okay. So we should have the name of the test, right? So if you want to get the name of the test, then we have to use like, okay. If for example, if you want to get the text, see what does this itext context does is like, see, we have this methods over there in the itext context, which will help you to identify the name of it. Okay. So returns the name of this test. Okay. So this class defines the test context, which contains all the information for a given test run. And an instance of this context is passed to test listener, so they can query information about their environment. Okay. So what is this is like what it will just pass it, like it's kind of like a querying out this particular test. It will query out this particular test and it will get the name of it. Okay. So but we should get the name of this test. So we don't have any test name defined here. So that is the reason why it is showing up in this way. If you give the name of the test, then what it does is like it will go to that particular test file and it will get that. So how do we give the name of the test? We have to create the XML file. Okay, that we'll look into the next thing. Okay, as the next step. in the next topic that we are going to discuss. But now it's like if you want to implement this listener, so I've created the listener and I'm just implementing this listener and I'm providing the custom behavior. Okay, on this methods. But now you see that likewise we want to create hundreds of classes, or sometimes we create 10 to 20 classes and we want to have the listeners for each and every class. In that case, how can we define? We cannot define going to each class and putting this listener. Okay, to avoid this set of things, what are we going to do is like we are going to create XML file. Okay, that's nothing but we are going to convert this class into a TestNG file. Let me create here as a simple class, otherwise. So here I'm going to create as like listener TestNG. So here itself I'm creating it. What are the annotations that we have to put as part of XML file? We have suite. Okay. So here I'm giving the class name. Okay. So I'm giving this. Now I want to avoid giving this listener at the test level, each and every test level. So for that, what I'm going to do is like I'm going to delete it. I'll go and give it here. Okay. So we have annotations called this as business suite. Now, so what is the test class that we have here? Is like this is a test class. Okay, TestNG class.listen. So every class that you define here will be listened by this particular class. Okay, TestNG listener class. Okay, this one dot class. Okay, so now I just remove this one. Now I don't have any kind of like @ annotation given here. So I'll be running this. I will see the behavior of it. Okay. So it's like null pointer exception. Okay, concurrent. The name that I have given, just checking. So yeah, it should be a class name. Business class name. Not found in the project class path. Okay. Path we have to define. Okay, complete path. Project class path that we have defined the class name also. SNG dot class test listener. Okay, this one we need to already we have given the dot class, right? So there I just opened it. So in case like if you are giving it class level, then we have to specify the class level. Otherwise, it is not required. Now run as SNG XML. Now do you see that now it is like test one, test one. It is showing up like what is the test name here? Default. Yeah. Earlier it was showing a default test. Okay. So when I run it, it was showing the default test. But now it is showing like this is a test one and we have the results here. On test on start is like test one, test started, set test one, test success. Okay. So likewise, whatever behavior we have as part of like execution, so that will be recorded. Okay, so now if we want to execute this on multiple, like let us take, I'm going to take different test names. The same classes, okay? If you want to have the different classes, that is also fine. Okay, test one, test two. In test one, I want to have only, for example, failed and skip cases. In test two, I want to have success. Now observe carefully. See, test one, test started. This is test one, success. All these things are there in test one. In test two, we have only failure and skip. Okay. In test three, he has two successes. Okay. So that's nothing but test four and test one and test four. So both of them are success. Okay. So it will show the started and test one. Okay. So let's have like complete set of things. So I'll just add one more. Okay, we have already have this annotation, but on test started, on test finish that we have. Let me just go and check for the method. Okay, so we don't have that on test finish. So it should be there actually. Okay, on finish we have. Okay, on start we have. Okay, we don't have that particular method. So we have like you can check this. I go to the iTest listener and you can check this on test start, on test success, on test failure, skipped, on test failure, but within success percentage. Okay, so that we want to just show that success percentage. So on start, on finish. Okay, these are the methods which are available as part of this interface. So now you saw this, right? So if you want to have the behavior, know the behavior, like what is happening during the execution and when does this test started and what is the status of that particular test. Okay, so you can just use this use these things so that we can just get the information about that particular test. So here, for example, if it is passing, right, so then we can add is like we can add result of it. Okay, test like get status dot success. Yes, okay, if you want to get the status of it, you will get the status. Okay, result is nothing but it will show you the status of that. Okay, so result is it will show you like what is happening in this test. See, it is showing up the status. Status 2 is like failed and 3 is like skipped. 1 is like pass. Okay, 1 is like pass. So you can use this statuses in case like if you want to compare something. If it is like not equals to some statuses, then we can like not equals to 1, that is failure. So otherwise we can have one more thing is like instead of let's go to this test engine file. Instead of getting the status, I'll be getting the result dot get it will return you the integer here. Directly, if you want to get the statuses of it, so we can get that result, test result dot, yeah, so success. So it is similar in this case. Failure. Skipped. Let's go and execute this from the test result dot success. What it does is like it's going to return you the status of it. So just we'll do sometimes what we do is like we are going to compare this. Okay. So for example, so if here I'm going to use result dot get status is equals to itest result dot success. If it is success, then I'm going to show this message. Okay. So on success, I want to show this message. So on failure, I want to show this message. Additional check that I'm going to just give it here. Okay. So whenever it is like something happened, I want to check with the results. Okay. So here, if you are success, you want to capture the screenshot, you can do it. If you want to failure, like if you want to capture the screenshot, you can do it. Okay. That's nothing but capturing the screenshots and just executing that test case. And if it is failing, then we can capture the screenshot. See, in the test one, I'll go and show you that. Here it did not put it, right? Test success. And okay, here we have like text failure and test skip. So because we are putting this particular, go here, and you are putting this results here. Okay. So it's just like if you want to show something here, what is the like statuses are like for 1, it is success. 2, it is failure. 3, it is skip. Okay, you can see it's returning. Okay, 1 is like success, 2 is like failure, and 3 is like skip. Okay, just that I'm just checking the status. So this will be like, again we can implement our framework also with the help of the in the listeners, but generally we'll go with the test engine. Okay, so this is like we looked into for listeners and how do we use this listeners as part of our class and as well as like test engine file. Okay, now the case is like I want to execute particular test case. Okay, particular test case like number of times. Okay, so so what I'm going to do is like I'm going to use one other annotation or one other way of using like implementing the interface is like I'm going to use the iRetry analyzer. Okay, so I'll just show you like what is that iRetry analyzer and why do we use that. We look into the documentation. Okay, so we have a lot of interfaces, guys, like like listener classes as well as like interfaces in TestNG. Most of them will be like unused, and we have 20 to 30, I guess. Okay, so it's like we have 20 to 30 listener interfaces as well as like annotations that we have, so that we can use them and we can execute our test cases. Okay, here you see that, yeah. So this is another way that we have used, right? So here's like command line also we can use using this annotation. This is like used with the help of like ant is nothing but that is like continuous building. Okay, so continuous building of this process. I mean, like if you are executing some test cases, that is like continuously it will execute those test cases. And how did we use it? See, this is how we use it, right? So we added this listener class, and we have given the name of that listener, and we can add multiple listeners also. Okay, it's not that only we have to use one, we can use multiple listeners also. Okay, let me go to this iRetry analyzer. So why do we use this iRetry analyzer is like if you see some test cases fail. Okay. So in that case, if you want to execute that again and see the result. So in that case, what it does is like it's going to execute the same test case again if it is failing. Okay. So how do we configure it is like we are going to configure. Now you see here, for example, first time I'm just executing this and it has just entered this admin123. And when you click on this login button, application is taking some time to load. Okay. But it is not executing as expected. Okay. It is not executing as expected. In that case, what happens is like this test case would be failed. Okay. So it's like page is not loaded properly or synchronization issue, elements are not available. In that case, it will fail. But after some time, this element will be available and page gets loaded. Okay. But the Selenium is faster. In that case, it will go and like, it will be like executing the sequence of steps that we have written. In that case, it will fail. And we want to recheck it again. Okay. So recheck it again and we want to ensure that it is passing for the next time. At least like, if page load or in certain cases, synchronization issues, in that cases, it may get failed. To avoid those things, so what are we going to do is like, we are going to use the iRetry analyzer. Okay. So this is nothing but a interface. So let me go to this and I'll show you how do we use this iRetry analyzer. Okay. For that, what we have to do is like, we have to create a separate class. Okay. So I'm just creating a retry class. So it is as simple as like listener. How did we implement the listener? In the same way, we are going to implement it. Okay. So here I'm going to use implements iRetry analyzer. Okay. So see, this is what the interface. So what are the methods that we have inside this interface is like, we can go and see. So retry. Okay, retry based on the results. If it is failing, it will take this and it's going to retry it. Okay, so let's go and try to implement it. So we have to write our custom logic here. Okay, we have to write our custom logic. How many times that you want to run this particular test? Okay, so how many times you want to run this particular test? So that what we can do is like, let me just add a simple piece of code here. So I want to check that count. Okay. So for example, if the test is failing, then again, I want to go to that test and I want to run it again. Okay. So, and we have like kind of statuses also. Based on the status also, we can just go and run those particular tests. So here we are going to give the maximum count, like how many times that you want to run this particular test. Okay. So here, just give me a second. Yes, I'm just. Yeah. So I'll take the result of it. So first is like, I want to just take the count, like maximum number of times I want to implement. Okay. So for this, I want to take the count as like is equal to 2 times I want to run it. In case if it is failed, then I want to run it 2 times. So here I'll write the condition. If just take the result of it, then we'll try to check it. Okay. If test result, what is okay, we don't have this success message here. So yeah, sorry. We'll check the result of it. Okay. So we'll take the retry analyzer, we'll check the result of that particular test. And how do we how do we get that particular result is like, I'll show you how do we like when we use this particular retry analyzer, it will go and check for each and every method. Okay. So each and every method, if some method is failing, then what it does is like, it's going to rerun that particular method. So if that method is success, okay, if it is success, result.success, then we don't do anything. Okay. So if the result got success, then we don't do anything. If it is failed, then what we do is like, we are going to just run it again. Okay. So here I'm going to write else. If I'll just check this result. result dot not success. Then what I'm going to do is like false, and I'm going to. And here what I'm going to do is like if it is success, I mean like if this success is given, and here I'm going to count it. Let me do one thing, guys. I'll just show you a brief example of how do we exactly use this data analyzer. Okay. So after that, we can just go into the implementation. Otherwise, you'll get confused here. So I'm going here. First thing is like I've explained it. Now I'm going to explain it. Okay. So now we see that we have three tests. Okay. Test one. Not good at writing. Okay. Let me write it here with this. This is test one. And this is test two. This is test three. Okay. So I just, I'm not using a data analyzer. So here the test one passes and test two fails. And here test three is like, it is skipped. Test one passing is like, okay, this is fine because this is success and we don't want to execute any set of like, test case again. So what happened is like, when we are executing test cases, so it is, if it is like only 1 to test cases, that is fine. Okay. So 1 to test cases, that is fine. But in case if we have hundreds of test cases, okay. But in case if we have hundreds of test cases, then in that case, if we have to execute them again, okay, if you have to execute them again, that it will take definitely a lot of time, right? So a lot of time, and again, if you have 100 test cases and 25 test cases are failing only because of some synchronization or because of some set of things like, when an object is not available. In that case, what we are going to do is like, we are going to rerun them. So instead of rerunning them manually, I mean like going back again, selecting those test cases and rerunning them. So I want to just have some set of things so that it can rerun the test case if it is failing. Okay, if it is failing. So that is the reason why we are going to use the iTest iRetest analyzer. Okay, retry analyzer. Sorry, iRetry analyzer. So this iRetry analyzer, what it does is like, it will check the status of that particular test. Okay, it will check the status of that particular test, and then what it is going to do is like, it's going to execute it again. If it is success, then what it does is like, it's sorry. What it's going to do is like, it's going to break that one. If it is failure, then it's going to rerun it based on the condition, the number of times that you want to execute that particular test. Okay. So for that, what we do is like, I'll just write a pseudocode here itself so that it will be easy for you to understand. First is like, I'm going to take into maximum time of tries that you want to do, max retry or else max retry. Okay. You want to give it as like 2 times. And there is another variable that I want to take is like count is equals to 0. Okay. So here I'm going to check for the condition. If result dot is success. Okay. So retry is success. Okay. Otherwise result is success. So in that case, what I'm going to do is like, in that case, what I'm going to do is like, I'm going to return it as like true. Okay. So return it as like true in the sense, that is success. Okay. So that is success. In case like if it is false, then what it has to do is like, it has to rerun that. What is that condition that we are putting is like, we want to just check the condition and that we want to just run it again. Run it again. Okay. So let me write the code here. So here you have taken this and max count is equal to 0. Sorry, I have taken this count, and here max retry equals to 2. If it is not success, then we'll write it here. So we are going to not success, and if max retries is like whatever we have max retries, retry is less than count. Less than count. Done. Also, otherwise, I'll just increment this and I'm going to count in this way. Return. If both of them are not working, then finally we are going to just return it as like a false. Okay. First is like we'll try to create some test here so that we can just use the retry analyzer over there. Okay. So here I'm going to use a test retry class. So how do we implement it? So it is as similar as like we are going to implement the listener. Okay. Listener, in that we are going to give the retry class. Retry that class. Okay. This is also kind of a listener that we have. Test public void just test. I'm going to take a count here, so I'll just take a static into count is equals to 0. Here we have to give this it. Disallowed at this location in this way. Okay, it is only allowing when we have this test engine. I retry analyzer, but we can add it like this also. Let me add it in this other way. So I'll just add this one as part of like test. Retry. We have like retry class, okay? So retry. Yeah. We need to give retry analyzer is equals to the class name. We'll discuss about like listener. How do we implement this as part of like listeners also and annotations also. So I'm giving like retry analyzer for this test. Okay. If this test is failing, then I have to execute this again. So here I'm going to take the count. Okay. So count, I'll just print the count here. Count plus plus, and here I'm going to make it as like a failed case. Okay. So row new. Intentionally I'm failing it to check it. Okay. No exception. Just fail. So I have a like retry analyzer class here. So the retry analyzer class, what it does to do is like it will come here and it will check for it. Okay. So it will check for this. If it is success, then what it does is like it's going to return true. If it is failure, okay, failure, then it's going to count this and it will increment again. It will return false. Okay. So let's go and execute. It should be like I will check what will happen with this. Okay. So let me add this here. We'll see what is the behavior. Now I'm going to run it. Okay. like failed, it is showing the count 0. Maybe I should change it, like it should be written true actually, not false. This is like false. Okay. Okay, return true in the sense again it should retry it. Okay. So I just expected false. Then yeah, this is like it is failing, but retry is not performing the action. Like let me check this one. So public I test retry analyzer. I retry analyzer. So yes, we have taken the max count and max re-entry. If it is not success, it will enter into this and it will check for this and it will return true. Okay, return true in the sense again it's going to re-execute this. So let me just check this one. Oh, now we see this. 2 is less than 2. Actually, I gave the wrong condition. Okay, so max, it has to enter into this, right? So let me execute this. Now we'll check this. Now we see that 0, 1, 2. How many times it has tried? Like you see, test 1, test to skipped, test to fail, test to fail. Okay, it gave the 3 times try. Okay, that's nothing but it is trying to execute this particular test for 3 times. Okay, but still it is failing. Okay, so let me do one thing. If count, I'll just add this max count 5. Okay, so I'll just change the logic here so that we can get that case as like pass case. Okay, so if count is less than 3, then it has to execute. Else it should say test passed. See, what I'm trying to do is like I'm taking this count here. So count 0 is less than 3. Yes, it will fail. 0 is less than, likewise, it will go and try to, like, it's going to increment this value, right? At the 4th time, when it comes to 4, then it's not going to throw this exception. It's going to say the test pass. In that case, it has to break. Okay. So that's nothing but it's giving the try for the five max times. And it will, like, every, like, once it is failed, it will go to the retry analyzer. It will go and check this logic. If it is like, if it is still this condition is passing, then it will return true. Okay, again go and re-execute this. So likewise, it will keep on trying that. If this condition is not passing, like for example, this is success now. Okay, so here it is like not success I am putting. Okay, if it is success, then it's going to return false. Okay, so let's go and try to check it now. So how many times it has to retry now? See, we'll go to the result here. Okay, first, second, and third time. Okay, so we don't have any here. Let me just check the logic. Test passed. Okay, once it is passed, it's going to break it. Okay, if you want to check this one, we'll check it. Okay, so I'll just increase the number of tries also. So 10, I'm giving maximum tries, and here I'll give some 8. Okay, so now we'll go and try to run this retry analyzer. Okay. See how many times now it is failing. First time failed, second time failed, third time failed, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and 8th time you can see it is passing. Okay, it is marking as like passed. Now you see, so what is happening in this case is like when the count comes 8. Okay, here we have a logic, right? 8 is not less than 8. So it is coming here and it is like it is saying test passed. We are not throwing any set of exception. This test is not failing. But how many times that we tried here is like we are putting max count is equal to 10. But at the 8th time it is passing, it is coming out of it. Okay, it's nothing but whenever it looks into the pass case, then it's going to return false. Okay, it's going to return false. So finally, what happens is like it's going to return. In this case, like you can still go and handle this. Okay, just like I'm just showing this is like only a simple example. Just we are checking the result and count number of tries that you want to count. Okay, if this is still passing, then we have to return this. Okay, return true. So that what it does is like it will go and try to retry that particular test. Okay, it's nothing but it's going to execute that particular test again. So likewise, it will give the try until this condition is failed. Okay, once this condition is failed, so it will come out of this loop. Then finally, it's going to throw the exception. That what is that exception? Is like we can just still go and give the exceptions also. Okay, so here additionally one extra. Yeah. So what it does, it's like it's going to return if. Finally, it is like it's going to try this. In this case, if you want to like throw it like finally, if it is not passing, then it's going to definitely throw it as like a false. I'll show it in real-time example also. Let us take this is one test. And if you have another test here, so in this test, I'll give count to 3, test 1, test 2. Here I'm going to give count 5. And here I'm going to give count 8. Okay, so first test should pass when it is like giving the 4 attempts. Okay, at the third attempt, like it's going to pass at the third attempt. So here I have given like in count is equal to 0. So that's the thing, but it should get out of this particular condition at the third time. Okay, so third time it will be like it will become 3. 3 is less than 3. Then it's like condition is false. Then it will come out of this. It will say the test pass. It's not going to throw the exception. Okay, so we have applied retry analyzer for all the 3 tests. Okay, so now you see, go and run it. So test 1, so it is passing at this time, and test 2, because we have taken the count here, right? So static count that I have taken, that is the reason why the stat, even if we take the count as like anything, any variable as static, that it will not change its behavior for the test. So what I can do is like I'll take count is equal to 0. Count 1, count 2. So here I'm going to put count 1. Here I'm going to put count 2. Now you should see the different behavior. So what is happening? Test time, it tested 1, it tried for 3 times, 3 attempts. Like third attempt, it's fast. And test 2 is like it tried for how many attempts it has tried. So count 1. So let me just go here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times it has to try. Maybe did I take this one as like count 1 is less than 5? So here it will come and it's going to check this count. Okay, so again, okay, it tried for max 10 times actually. Okay, so here you can see it tried for max 10 times. 1, 1, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And 11th time finally it said like no test failed. So it is also, it gave the count. I want to show you some. Okay, so here you see this, what we have done. Count 1 plus plus I have to put here. Count 2 plus plus I have to put. I'm not incrementing that count. Okay, so that is the reason why it stays like 0 and it's 0. I can see 1, 2, 3, and here it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. Fifth time it is passing. Here it is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we just missed it like count, incrementing the count here. So I've just taken the count and I was incrementing it. So that is the reason why it give maximum tries. After that, it said that it is failing. Okay, so maximum tries, and it was saying that it is failing. If this is like success, okay, if this is like success, then what it does is like it's going to return me the true. But if it is like failed, then it will go and try to from this particular logic. Okay, so this is nothing but we have like multiple things that we can implement in as part of this. So one is like you can just use result dot success. Another one we can use I retry. I test result dot, or we can use this one also we can use still. Okay, so not equals to if this is like it can be a skipped or it can be a success. Okay, so here we can use result dot success or get status. We can use that's nothing but result get status is not equals to 1. So this is also kind of like we are going to get the status of it, right? So now you can see what it returns is like it's going to return the integer. The status of this result using one of the constants above. Okay, so if it is not equals to 1, though it is skipped, it will go and try to give the it will go and try to execute the test case again. But best way is like we can just use this status. I mean, whatever we were looking like is success or is passed, or that is what we'll be using. Okay, let me type it as like not this one. So this is also it's going to return the success. Sorry, here we have to write result dot is success. If it is, I'm just putting not success. Okay, if it's not success, then we're going to use this. But this is fine. Do you see that we are applying this for every method? Okay, we are applying it for every method. I don't want to do this. Okay, so for every method, I don't want to do this. And sometimes I see that there are hundreds of methods. I cannot use this retry unless there is equals to true, or retry unless is equals to retry dot class. Okay, just that I want to execute this particular retry analyzer for the methods which are there in this class, for all the methods which are there in the class. So for that, we have to use one other annotation. Okay, so that is nothing but I annotation transformer. Okay, so retry, I'm going to give it as like retry all classes. So this is going to implement I annotation transformer. Okay, so I annotation transformer. Here also you can see that we have some methods which are there. Okay, so transformer method, transformer I configuration. So these methods are not shown up there, right? So for that, what we have to do, go to the editor, right click on this, go to the source, and you can see override implement. Okay, so which are the methods that we want to implement is like this is a method that I want to implement. Okay, let's consider all of them and we'll try to change this one. So here you can see we want to give the class, which class that we want to execute is like the retry class that we want to execute. Okay, so here we have like I configuration annotation and we have I data provider annotation. So which data provider we want to, so these are like different set of things, but generally what we want to do is like we want to execute only retry analyzer. Okay, so here I'm going to give annotation dot get, we have get retry analyzer class. Okay, so what we have to do is like we have to use this transform annotation and we have to give the retry analyzer class name here. So what is that retry analyzer? So this is the retry analyzer class that I want to execute on this particular. it says supplies the method is not applicable to the argument void class. I configure. Okay, I think this is like I annotation and this is like configuration. Let me just use this one here. Set read type. These all methods are not required. Let me just remove this. I'll put one method. I can't set this. Is that we have to specify this one as like on which class you want to set this annotation. This is fine, but we have given this retry analyzer. Super. Let me remove it and again we'll take it. Okay. Right click, go to the source, transform. This is the method that we want to use. I transfer, I annotation. You can see I test annotation, class, constructor, and method. Go here. I transfer. Okay, let me just remove this one. And I'm going to directly give it as like annotation. I'll just remove everything and just try to give annotation set retry analyzer, and we'll give it will be giving the class name retry class. Okay, so I think it's not accepting those parameters actually. So what I'm trying to do is like now I want to set only the retry analyzer. It's like what is that? This particular I annotation does is like it's an interface. This interface will be taken as like a listener. Okay, for every class that you have this whatever you want to execute this particular retry analyzer. Okay, retry analyzer in sense if you want to execute that condition for all the failed cases in the class, in the failed methods in the class, then what we are going to do is like we are going to use this I annotation and I'm going to set this annotation is like set retry analyzer, and this is a class, and whichever XML file has this listener, okay, whichever XML file has this listener, then it's going to go and give the try for that. Okay, so it's nothing but it's going to apply this retry for that particular class. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is like I'll go to this retry class. Where is that implementation class here? So here I'm going to create, or else I'll convert this one to XML file and just add that one as like a listener over there. So I name it as like retry SNG XML. Go here. Where is that? So I'll just move to this folder, retry XML file. Now here we have to give it as like a listener. So which class we want to continuously listen? Is like we want to listen to this annotation. What is that annotation? All implementation, retry all implementation class, right? So this is the class that I'm going to give. So I'll give it here. And just you can add this particular path. Okay. Now you see that which class that we want to try executing that retry is like this is the class that I want to execute. Okay. So now you can go and execute this. See what it is doing now? I did not put that retry analyzer in the class, right? So I did not put retry analyzer in the class, in this test class. Okay. So earlier what we did, so we tried to put this retry analyzer, right? Retry analyzer is equals to, what is that class name? Retry class dot class. Okay. Now you see, if I try to execute this, you see a different behavior. Only retry will be applied to the first class. First method, sorry. So now you can see. So it is trying for 3 times, and the second method you see that it is failing, and third method is failing because we did not apply the retry analyzer to them explicitly. Okay. But now you see, when I remove this and I'm going to execute this particular retry analyzer from the XML file. Okay, how did I configure this? I've taken the interface called iTest annotation, I annotation transformer. Sorry. Let me just go to that class where we have written this is the class. Okay, I annotation transformer. So this I annotation transformer, what it does is like it's going to apply that retry analyzer for the specified classes. Okay, so this I annotation transformer will be taken as like a listener, and this will listen to the classes, okay, what we have specified as part of XML. Okay, now you can go here and see that I have just created a listener, and this listener would be listening to this class. If any test is failing here, it's going to call this retry, okay, this retry class, and it's going to execute this condition on that particular test. Even we are not specifying retry analyzer at each and every level in the method. Okay, every method in the class. Okay, every level of the method or every method in the class. We are not specifying anything here, but this is configured as part of like XML file. Internally, what it does is like it will go to this class. If any method is failing, it will go to this listener. This listener is nothing but it's going to invoke this retry all class, and retry all class is like annotation here. So this method, what it does is like it will check for this particular class. Okay, so it's nothing but it's going to execute this thing, set retry analyzer. So it is like it's going to execute this particular class on the, I mean, like whatever logic we have written inside this retry class, right? So this will be applied on this class, retry, test retry class. So though you are not specifying anything as like retry analyzer. Now it's like only one-time configuration. Okay, it is like one-time configuration. You not to go and change it anytime. So if you have like multiple retry analyzers that you want to use, it's like you can just go and add it as like one more class, and you can implement I annotation transformer, and you can add it as like a listener here. Okay, so we can add multiple listeners also. So likewise, if you want to have this test, see now what happens. So this is test 1, test 2, and test 3. So this is like retry class 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so here I'm going to put I just created this class. This is not required. Only one class is fine. And which is the class that we have tests, that class that we want to mimic. Okay, so this is what the class that we have, right? So I want to just drag and drop. So here I'm going to come and I'm going to add it as well. See, in first test, I'll remove these things. Just I'm segregating them. Okay, so just I'm segregating this. Okay, so test 1, it's going to try for 3, and test 2, it's going to try for 5 times. That's nothing but the 5th time it will pass, and it's going to, in test 3, it's going to try for 8 times. Okay, so 8th time it should pass. Now I'm going here to the XML file. I have like 3 different tests now. Okay, so 3 different tests and 3 different classes also. with one retry analyzer. Only one retry analyzer will be applied for all the three different classes. Within that, we have three different methods also. Now you see, first class, it is giving like 3 tries, and third time it is passing. In second class, it is giving for say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Here also it's going to give for 8 times try. Okay. So this is like another important interview question, guys. So in interviews, they are going to ask you like, how do you rerun those failed test cases? We have two things. One is like, whenever if some test is failing, here in the test output, we'll get the fail.xml file. Okay. So you can see that testng.fail. Okay. So this is what we can try executing this. So it does the same thing here. Now you see that it's going to execute that. Last executed XML will be stored in this testng hyphen, not hyphen, but testng dash fail.xml. Okay. So what it is doing is like, it's going to record all this. See, I did not create it, right? So what I'm going to do is like, I'll just see this. Now I'm going to delete this. Automatically what it does, it's going to create that failed XML. I'm going to this XML file. I'll go and execute this again. We got this. Now refresh this folder, test output folder, refresh it, expand this, you'll get this testng hyphen fail.xml. Okay, dash r hyphen. Okay, now you can see that it is automatically creating this. If any test is failing, and I mean like in terms of like when you are executing that particular XML file and it is failing, in that case, it's going to create testng hyphen fail.xml file. Okay, so this is one way. The other way is like, if you want to retry, give the retry, then what you can do is like, you can use this configuration. Okay, so whatever configuration that we have created as part of like testng listener, so you can just go to this retry. Which one is that? Yeah, testng class. This is not the one. Okay, so retry all classes. That's nothing but I have created annotation. That annotation will take care of execution. So, but that annotation should be like whatever we have taken I annotation transformer, right? So that is nothing but the interface. That interface will be treated as like a listener in the XML file. That listener will take care of executing the retry method on this particular classes. Okay, if any class, and it is not meant, it is like now you see that if you have like only one test, so it's going to apply for one test. If you have multiple tests, for example, here we are putting it for 6. Okay, it's going to apply for this also. Okay, all the classes within that class, all the methods. Okay, it will apply for all the methods. See now, 1, 2, 3, it has passed. 1, 2, like in the second test lab, so it is like failing. So that is the reason why it gave the try for 3 times. Okay, so within the same class, 2 different methods. Here, 1 method. In this test, we have 1 method. Okay, in the class, different methods. Like in the test, in the different classes, and in different classes and different methods also. It will apply that retry. So you don't have it now. You don't have any kind of headache for us like going and adding this retry analyzer is equals to like whatever the class that you want to give. So that is not required now. Okay. So directly we can go and add that particular logic in the I annotation class. So this is like retry class. What we are trying to do is like we want to give the maximum tries here. So based on the condition, like if that result is successful, then I'm going to check for this. Like it is failure. Okay. Sorry, it is failure. In that case, I'm going to check for this condition and I'm going to increment the count. Okay. I'll return true. If it is like again, it will go and check for the result. If that result is now it is like failure, it will go and again return this. Now for the third time it is like success. Then what it does is like it will come out of this. For example, it will check here and it will come out of this and it will show that it's like a false. Nothing but again, it's not required to execute this particular test. If it is like count is failed and you see that it's like still it is failing at the last time also. Then it's going to finally say that this test is failed. Okay. So this is how we'll be using the retry analyzer. So retry analyzer is like one interface, iRetry analyzer. On top of it, if you want to configure this iRetry analyzer for all the classes and all the methods in the class, then we have to use the iAnnotation transformer. iAnnotation transformer is like, it's an interface that should be implemented, and that interface, okay, I'll take you to this. Okay. So this iAnnotation transformation is an interface that should be implemented here, and we have to take the transform method. So in this transform method, this is the annotation that we have to use. This annotation, we need to configure that set retry analyzer. Okay. So if you take any other, see, there are like different set of things here, methods. So their purpose is different. Okay. So when I take this method, their purpose is different. So here, if I take this, yeah, so we have already have this configuration. This is different configuration. So whatever you want to specify here, set C. This annotation is different. I configuration annotation. This is like I test annotation. Okay. So set the dependencies on this if you want to execute something, and like multiple things, like different classes. From different classes, if you want to configure something, you can configure. Okay, annotations, like whatever annotations you want to specify, you can specify. After method, after suite. So, like what do you want to do before you start executing that particular test case? Okay. So I'll stop it here, guys. And we have discussed a lot of things today also. We discussed about like listeners. How do we implement the listeners? So in certain cases, you can see that TestNG listeners, if you want to perform something before the class, before executing, or if you want to notify the user what is happening, which test is executing, what is the status of the test. So we can use the iTest listener. Unless if you want to give the try, like multiple tries on the failed test cases, we can use iRetry analyzer. And if you want to apply that iRetry analyzer for all the classes in the project, then we can go and use this iAnnotation transformer. So that is an interface, and we can add it as like a listener also. Okay. So listeners, we discussed about like how do we add these listeners to the class also. So here we have to specify that if you want to specify the listener. For example, if we have listener, and if you want to specify, you can specify this. So what is that listener that we have? Here is like TestNG class. So this is the listener. Go to that class here, and you can put listener.class. Okay. iRetry try to add it, but it's not allowing me. But we can add it as well as like a listener also. So it should listen to all the classes, but as we see that there is a limitation. This is happening for each and every class, right? So here we are specifying this. So where is the iRetry result? So this is nothing but iTest results. It is getting the result from that particular method. So that is the reason why it is not allowing me to do that one. So let me try here. So here if I add that retry, so it says like this cannot convert, like, okay, it has to extend this iTest. So it says like, if something is extended as like iTest engine listener, then only it will apply. The listeners will be applied. Otherwise, we cannot use this one. So anyways, we have a tag here. So we can use this one. Here, it's like retry analyzer extends. So this is nothing but it's extending the iRetry analyzer. So you can give the name of this. So what is that? You want to explicitly apply for a specific class and a specific method in that class, then we can go ahead and use this retry analyzer. Otherwise, in some cases, like that class is not included in that XML file. If you want to apply retry analyzer for that method, okay, within that class, then you can go and use this one. If it is like there in the XML file, the class is defined in the XML file, then there is not required. Okay, it's not required to add this retry analyzer. Okay, just you need to add this listener, and this listener will take care of retrying that particular test cases, failed test cases. Okay, so this is all about listeners, guys, and we are done with this TestNG. we have covered all the concepts, like whatever we have here, the concepts that we use as part of test engine. So tomorrow I'll be starting with Maven. So Maven is like a kind of project that we are going to create. Now we don't have any reference files, everything else. So it will be like, it will take care of all set of dependencies, and also like how do we add the plugins, dependencies, how do we run XML file through the Maven, and how do we create the structure of the Maven, what are source folders, central libraries, and what is local library, how do we install this Maven, downloading, installing, configuring Maven. So that we'll discuss tomorrow. Okay. So please,
Okay, sir.
yeah, please go through this video, guys. This is very important. I'll upload all these classes today. Okay. So whatever we have discussed, like Selenium test engine and test engine listeners. Okay. So have you tried with data driven testing that we discussed as part of like Selenium data provider, test engine data provider? Please try to practice it, guys. It will, see, don't skip and don't pile up the classes. Okay. So it will be like very difficult for you to understand. There are a lot of things that we have discussed. So everything I'm trying to cover as part of the course also. Okay. Which is like, in real time also, how do we exactly use it? And what are the different scenarios that we cover as part of the project that I'm just explaining it. Okay. So at the end, like you should be comfortable in creating a simple, small project at least. Okay. If you go with 5 to 6 years of experience, this is more than enough. This is more than enough. Like if they ask you all about these things, then you can easily answer. You should easily answer these questions.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for your time, guys. So let's meet tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.